What is that one thing that can transform this world? That one thing is education.
At Sai University, this active interdisciplinary model represents the future of education, not the mugging, rather thought-provoking ideas that stretch the mind and lead to a genuinely educated person who will go through life being able to seize new opportunities, create new businesses, and confront new challenges.
Sneha Chowdhury, Soumya Gandhi,
Utkarsh Kumar, Abhishek Jain.
We are all proud to be a part of Sai University.
So good evening, everybody. Namaste and a very warm welcome to all of you to the Blub World Web Talks 152nd episode. Thank you so much for joining in. Request everybody to keep yourself on mute during the complete conversation. Once it's your chance to speak, you can unmute yourself. Thank you so much to the audience for joining in. A very warm welcome to everyone. This is the 152nd episode of the Blub World Web Talks. In the last 151 episodes, we have interacted with nearly 2,500 school leaders on this very platform, where they've shared their ideas, their opinions, their innovation, and what all new are they doing in the education space. Before we start, just to give you a small little introduction about the platform, this is a bilingual platform, so you can use either English or Hindi, any of these two languages in your conversation. Try sticking to these two languages, but if you want, you can use a third one, but I won't get it. So try sticking to these two. In the next 60 minutes that we have with you, we'll try to take your opinions, your ideas, and your thoughts, and typically thoda sa crystal gazing or future telling or future forecasting. We'll try to know from you what will be the skills that are required or that will be needed in the kind of lives that our students, our next generation is going to have, because we all know now a single career life would be quite rare. We'll all be going through, or they'll all be going through, a multi-career life, and what kind of skills will keep them afloat in different careers, different industries, and what would be the super essentials in the skilling segment when we talk in the education space. So thank you so much once again for joining in. Most importantly, the Blub World Web Talks is a timed platform. Think of it like a sprint. It's not a speaking marathon, it's a speaking sprint. So once your speaking time is over, you might get muted. If you get muted, please don't get offended. It is just to finish the activity on time and keep it more crisp and entertaining, so that within those small little amount of time that you have, you put your best foot ahead and we get to hear some amazing things from you, and we are able to finish it within 60 minutes. So thank you once again for joining in. This is the 152nd episode of the Blub World Web Talks. A very warm welcome to all of you. Let's talk about skills for a multi-career future. To initiate the roundtable today, or to initiate the discussion, let me invite the first speaker for today, Dr. Siddharth S., Assistant Professor of Philosophy at Sai University, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Siddharth, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio, and a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Gore, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. To quickly begin proceedings, the expectations at work are changing. It's something that we all know. And one of the biggest change, according to some studies, is that there is going to be an increased focus on skills rather than roles. That is, organizations are going to look for people with skills rather than look at qualifications to fit a particular role. This is because that they expect that people would be performing different roles across one's career, even if they are at the same organization. So they want people with specific skills which they can use across roles. So what are some of these foundational skills that are likely to be important, whichever role one takes up, and which will help one build a more successful career? I want to, over the next few minutes, talk about 3 such skills. The first is what is commonly called critical thinking. It is something which I'm sure all of us have heard of it, but what is critical thinking really? To quickly sort of define it, at a fundamental level, critical thinking is the ability to think systematically about any issue and look for adequate reasons about the issue before one forms an opinion or makes up one's mind about the issue or decides on a course of action on how to solve a problem. Again, I'll not get into what exactly reasoning involves. It involves certain rules, and there are norms of reasoning. And further, there are common errors which people do while reasoning, which you should not do when you think critically about an issue. But critical thinking also involves things like questioning your own assumptions as we reason about an issue. For example, if you're recommending a solution to a problem, you have to be able to back it up with proper reasons as to why are you proposing this solution, and make a sound or a cogent argument for it. Further, critical thinking also involves development of certain attitudes such as curiosity, an attitude of being open-minded, being welcoming to discussions, being willing to consider what other people say, and things like that. So this is the first skill that I wanted to mention. This brings me to the second skill, which is communication. Even as we saw, critical thinking itself involves the ability to discuss with others and be welcoming of other issues, which brings us to communication skills. And this goes along. Critical thinking and communication sort of go hand in hand, because clear communication also requires a critical attitude, requires one to be systematic in one's thinking and have a clear thinking which you can then communicate. So apart from good language fluency, which is also important for communication, good communication skill requires one to understand the purpose of communication, understand who the audience is, and then being able to present the content in a well structured and clear manner. And this goes for all kinds of communication, whether it be oral or written communication. And the third skill which I wanted to briefly talk about is not a very well defined skill, but it's rather an ability to work with a diverse set of people. And this requires one to be empathetic in all their dealings. This is especially significant because in the coming years, one is likely to be working with people who are from very different backgrounds, and backgrounds very different from one's own. And this diverse set of people are likely to come with different skills and strengths, different ways of communication, different ways of thinking, etc. So one has to be equipped to work well with them, which will require us to look at things, at least as far as possible, from other people's perspectives. This again requires us to reevaluate our own beliefs and ways of working. But apart from that, it requires us to develop empathy and become better at working with other people. And this becomes even more crucial as one takes up leadership positions as well. So to summarize, the three skills which I think are important for a multi-career future are critical thinking, good communication skills, and being able to work with a diverse set of people, which requires one to develop empathy.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. Sir, the first 4 minutes were over. To summarize what you said, which you rather already did, is first increased focus on skills rather than roles. When we look at careers, when we look at jobs, we look at the perspective of a role. What are we supposed to do when we go into an organization? But now when we typically have to maneuver around roles, we need to think on the kind of skills that we'll need, or the way we have to equip ourselves so that we are good at any role that comes to us. Finally, you talked about critical thinking, which you think is a very critical skill that we'll be needing in the future generation when we talk of a multi-career life. In critical thinking also, you have to typically talk about curiosity, being open, communication, the purpose of understanding the purpose of communication, because the biggest challenge with most of the people who understand communication is they only understand the messaging part of it. They do not understand the listener, and they, most importantly, they even do not understand that what kind of an environment is your listener in. So being empathetic in the communication sphere as well is something that's very critical. And finally, you talked about empathy, which is a very important skill even right now on the when we talk of the Industrial Revolution 4.0, it's a very critical skill that's even listed there as well. So thank you so much, Siddharji. Let me invite the next speaker for today. Now, in the next section, we'll be talking to school leaders to have their perspective on how are they equipping their children, their students to be ready for a multi-career life. Because now even the higher education institutions have a very different kind of an expectation from the student that comes into their institution. So let me invite Mrs. Yamini Savur, the principal of Sri Sai Angel School from Chikmagalur, Karnataka. Before we go to ma'am, on the platform, we try to get in the maximum geographical variety as possible so that no opinion, no idea, no perspective is lost in the communication. So over to Yamini ma'am to share her perspective on what are the skills for a multi-career future.
Namaste, Daksh. Good evening, all the eminent principals or the heads of institutions. Thank you so much for having me once again on this platform. A very good evening to the audience watching this. And what are the skills that we seek to prepare our students with for the future? I think this pandemic itself has taught us so many things that it's not enough to just have, just have your 3 Rs. So there's a lot of dependence now on creativity. So I think we need to train our kids with their creative skills. Uh, Children are naturally creative, they're naturally curious, we all know this. And creativity enhancing this, getting them to learn one of the arts, helps them think around. This has to be a passion also. So it's not just something which is, this will help them come out of a box. So this is going to help them a lot. Another thing is, for team building skills are so important for the future. They need to be part of a team. There has to be interdependence. We need to, to survive. This is a survival skill again, I feel, and this will help them bond with others empathetically, to show compassion for others. So I think sports, training them in sports and getting them to participate is going to be, it's going to make a huge difference to how they prepare themselves for the future. So along with the 3 Rs, I feel that this has to be there. And this automatically will also help them develop communicative skills. And, already we had to learn a new skill because of what had happened. All of us had to suddenly turn tech savvy. So this is something that is taken for granted now. But once we come back into mainstream, once we start interacting again, I think we need to start looking at each other, because everyone has become so housebound now. And, we are just conversing across a screen, across a blue screen. So I think that we need to revive a lot of sports and creativity for our children to be able to communicate, to be able to get back into society. This is going to make a huge difference for the future, along with the 3 Rs.
Thank you so much, Yamini ma'am. To summarize, we talked a lot about creativity, which now we could also consider as a survival skill, because if you're not creative, you won't be able to maneuver around careers and move into different industries at the same point of time. And most importantly, when we consider these skills as survival skills, I think that adds the kind of urgency that we need in the process of teaching skills or deciphering skills. Because now it's no more about the content or the syllabus that's being delivered. It's more about the individual whom we are developing. Because as an individual, he should be robust enough to handle situations, to handle uncertainty. Because one thing that we know for sure, post-COVID, that there are a lot of different new COVIDs in the waiting line, and we might have a very different kind of a future. Even for us, it's typical to handle and quite difficult to digest. So thank you so much, Yamini ma'am. Let me invite the next speaker for today, Mrs. Anita Bijesh, Principal of Delhi Public School from Bengaluru South, Bangalore, Karnataka. Anita ma'am, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio, and a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daksh. I completely agree with what both the eminent resource persons spoke. But to add to it, I think something what is very, very important is also the willingness to learn and initiate. Learning is fine, accepting information is fine, gaining knowledge is fine, but the willingness to learn and initiate is something that we must encourage our children to do, because they must not be blinkered in their approach. So the ability to connect divergent arenas, that is a great skill. They must be motivated to explore and charter routes to self-discovery. See what is it that they would like to learn in terms of diversity. And as Yamini ma'am said about integrating technology, or if I could say empowerment by being digitally literate, it sort of broadens our horizon. And somewhere you realize that even in the workplace, things are interdisciplinary. So you might be excellent at artificial intelligence and coding, which might be, your chosen profession. But if you're unable to communicate effectively, you will then eventually lose out. So you see how things are, like the skills that were mentioned over here. So you have to put all of it together on one platter. Okay. And another thing, what I definitely agree and what I definitely think about is that you have to be excellent at time management and self-management. So it is such a huge requisite, because today you know that time is energy, time is power. So Time management happens to be one of those most important organizational skills that would catapult anybody to success. And self-management is something that is a takeoff from what I said, about willing to learn, to diversify. So it includes being an active learner. When I talk about self-management, it's about being flexible and not rigid. You could be erudite, but you must be malleable. So you must be very malleable in your outlook. As my colleagues mentioned, yes, being empathetic. So the emotional and social connect is very, very important. Along with that, I would also like to bring about resilience, because resilience is something that allows you to confront challenges, and it allows you to tolerate stress, which is something that you need today. We've seen it during the pandemic, and it's only going to get worse, in the future. So this is something that I would like to stress upon.
Thank you so much, Ankita ma'am. Let me summarize what you said. Willingness to learn, to initiate. I think the agency aspect or the initiative aspect must be developed in every student, because with the kind of lives that we see in the future, we will have to be, very active in our approach. We cannot be passive anymore. We cannot let life be the way it is. We have to make it the way we want it to be. So from being that passive individual to transforming into an active individual. And when we talk of the learner, then an active learner. And students should not get blinkered in their approach, seeing what the students would like to learn, always delving deep into his psyche or her psyche, so that we understand better that what is the requirement set that they have within their minds that we should delve into and understand better. Work is absolutely interdisciplinary, and it cannot be in isolation. So the teaching of subjects in silos or isolation has to go away with, and we have to, build a much more interconnected approach that keeps the complete story together. Right now, the story is different across periods and across subjects, which cannot be the case anymore when we talk about education. Putting the variety on a single platter. This is the biggest challenge for a school, because as an institution, the school is not very, very well equipped to do this. But now the schools will have to upgrade and equip themselves, because now the kind of expectations that parents have and the kind of expectation we have from the future, we rather need superhumans than just humans. Going ahead, you talked about time and self-management, being able to diversify, being flexible, emotional and social connect, and finally, resilience to tolerate stress. Because when we look at the kind of kids and teens that we have around us, this is something that's drastically and dramatically missing. They do not take stress very comfortably. They just get busted out of it, and they do not have that kind of a resilience that, okay, if something has gone bad, no issues, we'll come back to it. This attitude of coming back to it is not at all there. I think it has to be focused a lot more upon. Thank you so much, Anita ma'am. Let me invite the next speaker for today, Dr. Manjula Raman, CEO for the Royal Concord International Group of Schools from Bengaluru, Karnataka. Manjula ma'am, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Please unmute your audio, and a very warm welcome.
And thank you, Daksh. It's a pleasure to be back on Blub. And well, I will start from the expectations of the parents, the society, and ourselves from the teachers. And nothing can work unless we have a multidisciplinary approach, which is sensorial and experiential. Sensorial, we have always heard in Montessori way of learning, but it doesn't only deal with the primary, the KG section. It has to be a live design thinking mold where all subjects are integrated and value is added to teaching. And blending of different subjects will allow not only to make the learning extremely interesting, it will also have a collaboration of different teachers or different educators in a school. And I think that is what will add value and build skills. Like my colleague said, there should be skills of collaboration, of empathy, of critical thinking, problem solving. Now, how does that happen in isolation? It cannot. And so even the teaching learning has to be a collaborative process. Right from the subjects that are taught already, we have started integrating art, thinking design. We have started, bringing in a lot of new variety in the way we present a lesson. We are integrating subjects like we had just heard that science students, if they took economics, that was a big thing. Now it's not anymore. It's a science math student taking art. I mean, that is how I think things are going to be in future. Well, it has to be extremely skill-based. What happens is that there has to be an equal blend of theory and practice. So obviously, a very close connect with the industry, very close connect with mentors who have achieved in their field. For example, artists, scientists, teachers, doctors. And I have always felt that a doctor should come and teach biology. Maybe NASA scientists should come and teach physics, or at least we have a guest lecture. So that is what is going to be the future. And there has to be learning communities. Now, the learning communities cannot be only the students. So when we talk about learning communities, it is first the teachers, then the parents, and then the students, because these two people play a very important role in motivating the child to learn, because that's the future, because that child is going to be the future who's going to make a success of his life. And that rich learning experience will come with only triple L, that is lifelong learning. And when we say lifelong learning, I mean, even the dadi of the house will have to have, connect with what exactly is happening in his in her little grandchild's life, because that is the way that, her experience, her way of life gets blended. Because when we go back to basics, when we go back to experiential learning, it's not all about virtual learning, about something which is very unreal. It has to be something very concrete, which is, yes, technology is a fantastic tool to, bridge space, to bring in the best learning things into the classroom. But that's not all. The real thing is something very different. That is the experience that one learns and applies. And that is why I think the learning has to be more application based. It has to be a synchronized process where the industry and the society, that schools have to work together. And schools can't live in isolation. Not anymore.
Thank you so much, Manjula ma'am. To summarize what you said, that first we need to rather delve deeper into understanding what are the expectations of different stakeholders, because people come in with a different perspective to the complete process of education. They see educative transformation from their own understanding of life. And that's where we need to force the thought, or rather put the thought through to these stakeholders, that we are finally focusing on lifelong learning. It should not just be focused on a job that will come as an outcome of the complete education. Sensorial and experiential teaching, value add to teaching. Now we need to consider teaching as a process in which you have to continuously add some new elements. This is not stagnant. It's not a course that's been going on for 6-7 years now. This is something that's going to evolve every single day. Because once you convert teaching from a one-way communication to a collaborative process, that's where innovation or new content becomes a mandate. You cannot work without continuously adding new things to the complete conversation in the classroom. Most importantly, lesson presentation has to find completely new aspects to it, and we have to add those media skills into it so that it goes just beyond content delivery to a little bit of engagement, and rather sometimes to a little bit of entertainment. Blending theory and practice. Accomplished professionals should teach their subjects. This is a kind of an aspiration that we all have. And I think the social construct has to mold accordingly so that these professionals have a duty of devoting some time to students. And as we also as professionals should take out time every week, or rather every day, that we should be giving to students around us. So learning as a community comes into place. The society, we teach people, it's always been said, it takes a village to raise a child. So let that village be there. Let that community be there. Let us all at least donate or devote some time to children around us so that we can grow and improve them or add to their personalities. Learning communities to be developed, lifelong learning, generational knowledge exchange. This is something that we have lost. This is rather what the NEP tells, folk knowledge, or knowledge that's locally available, which we discredit in our system. This is something that we need to understand and refocus things and position or rebrand folk knowledge as critical, as important, so that the students start paying a little more respect and a little more attention to what their dadas and dadis are telling them in their houses. So thank you so much, Manjula ma'am. Let me invite the next speaker for today, Mrs. Aruna M. Visesar, the Senior Principal and Correspondent at Adhyapana School from Madurai, Tamil Nadu. Aruna ma'am, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Daksh. it's been a wonderful experience thus far amongst erudite scholars. We've heard all the skills that are required, starting from critical thinking and communication and empathy and team spirit and, all of those. So I thought I will just mention a few of those skills that have not been thus far discussed. One of those is negotiation skills. I think that forms a big part of our day-to-day work life. We have to negotiate with parents, with students, with colleagues, in fact, with our own turmoils and interests. So there needs to be a big thrust on negotiation skills. Apart from that, emotional intelligence is a very important factor, because we know that in these turbulent times, there has been a lot of emotional disturbance amongst parents, students, and even teachers. We've not had the opportunity to go out to interact with people. There is no physical contact. Yamini ma'am talked about sports. In fact, what we have done is to have online sports where the athletic field comes into the house rather than the children coming out into the fields. We also talked about social intelligence, the power, the ability to interact with members of the society, be it the person's own age group, the peer group, adults, older people, younger people. So we have needed to interact with so many. Virtual collaboration is something else that I would really like to stress upon. For instance, today's interaction, we've got people from so many parts of the country, and this is a virtual collaboration, sharing thoughts about the same idea on the same platform. Most importantly, the aspect of self-management. Because students, what happens nowadays, especially in the student community, is that they're quite used to being propped up by parents or teachers. They have actually forgotten the art of decision-making, creative thinking, because everything is being spoon-fed, and there is therefore a big vacuum there, where I think the aspect of self-management needs to be dwelt on. And these are my take on the various aspects, skills that are required, because gone are the days when you started in one career and you learned progress. That's gone. We ourselves have to be IT experts, administrators, teachers, runners, sportsmen, sportswomen. So all of this requires multi-skills for a multi-career approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aruna ma'am. And let me try to summarize what you said. You started with a very important skill that has been talked very less about, which is persuasion or negotiation. And when we talk of negotiation, even two very important aspects to it, internal and external. There are a lot of internal negotiations that we need to do. Once we are in these lockdown situations, we have to do a lot of internal negotiation. And now we should learn to make this a part of the teaching and the education process that we have. Because persuasion is going to be a much more critical skill in the coming time. Because now when we are connected virtually, the communication changes, the message changes, the listener changes, the environment changes, and they all change at a pace which is not so predictable. And that's we cannot be at pace with the pace that it changes. So we need to understand how are we going to communicate, and that's where persuasion, negotiation becomes even more critical. And when we talk of multiple career lives, there is a lot of negotiation that we'll be doing in salaries, in fees, in consultation fees. And this is something that will become very critical. Emotional intelligence, you talked about. Virtual sports session, this is something that has pleased everyone, that we are able to play within our homes, within our boundaries, and within the small little spaces that we have within our houses. Social intelligence, virtual collaboration, self-management, and finally you talked about art of decision-making. And I think taking decision-making as an art is something that's very, rather I would say we should rather be appreciating this when you consider decision-making as an art. Because we, in our complete process of education, think of decision-making as an empirical process or a scientific process. But decision-making rather is not a very scientific process. When you talk of children in the age of school or even in the university, it's kind of an art where you finally have to rely on your gut feeling, But developing that gut feeling, developing that instinct is something that can happen through education, where we transcend or typically take the journey from just content delivery to wisdom. And I think that's where the typical transition from the science of decision making happens to the art of decision making. So thank you so much, Aruna ma'am. Let me invite the next speaker for today. This is Sneha Rai, the principal for Freedom International School from Bengaluru, Karnataka. Sneha ma'am, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Please unmute yourself and a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Daksh, and a very good evening to everyone here. Today, we cannot envision a well-defined future, though we've realized over the past few years that the skills or the education that we empower our children with and took for granted may not be the right foundation for tomorrow. The present COVID crisis, as Yamini ma'am rightly said, has just accelerated this need for change. We are already aware and have incorporated critical thinking and creativity in schools today. It is important for children or adults to be able to use these skills, their skills or resources, in a very multifaceted fashion. We need to encourage lateral thinking to be able to recognize the potential in the resources around us, challenge the constraints. A simple example, a decade ago, when we introduced online system for marks entry, we used our knowledge of computers to simplify the total and percentage calculations for children in our class. We didn't want to do it, 20 or 30 times. Until, of course, presently we have professionals who've developed softwares that we use today. Gaming is something that frustrates all parents. It takes away the so-called productive time from children. However, this very same fun medium with some modifications could be used for enhancing learning as a therapy for mental illness or training for various skills and so much more. We need to challenge the norm, open our minds. Not everyone needs to be a doctor or an engineer for the future. Gaming and coding is a whole industry and a very lucrative one at that. The AI, drones, data sciences, the analytical applications of all of this to be able to conceptualize, draw patterns and summarize a greener earth, how to become a more greener world, sustainable living, reducing e-waste. These are, we are already facing climate change. And for the youngsters of tomorrow, it's not just a social imperative, it's a necessity and an economic imperative as well. The future will probably develop an entire economy around a greener earth. COVID has just brought home to us the importance of fields such as neurosciences, bioengineering, genomics, pharmacy. And we as educationists need to bring in this awareness and interest in these areas for our children to enable our youth to make decisions on what changes they want to make in their future. Entrepreneurial skills, financial literacy that we already talk about are the areas that need, greater prominence in education today. Children need, like most of us discussed earlier, children need to learn to communicate effectively and collaborate for optimum results irrespective of the field that they choose to pursue. Failure is a part of the game. Accepting failure, learning from it, moving is also a very important, crucial skill. The ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a very positive way. Soft skills such as communicate effectively, empathize, mindfulness, living in harmony, overcoming challenges, to diffuse conflict, create that effective environment is absolutely important. Merely talented, we don't really need multi-talented individuals. So long as we don't need one individual to be multi-talented, as long as he or she is has the ability to build a team, a multi-talented team. That is the need of the hour. One skill that I absolutely believe that we should impress upon our youngsters in all this digital age and everything that's happening is the importance of meditation and yoga. It brings about a certain calmness and a stability in an individual's. And one last thing that is not necessarily a skill, but I think a character that we should insist to develop.
Thank you so much, Neha ma'am. The 4 minutes are over, but we'll again try to come back to you. To summarize what you said, the biggest challenge that all of us are facing is we are not able to build a structured future within our minds. We cannot dream it anymore. We cannot understand it anymore. We are not able to forecast it. And that's where the biggest challenge is coming in. And that's where we started these discussions on what kind of future we'll have, what kind of skills do we need. And I think that's the genesis of it. And we all now need to understand that an important skill that all of us are missing is, where you concluded your talk, being meditative, being more internalized. Because when you cannot control what's externally there, let's control what's internally with us. This is something that we all have transformed ourselves into while we went through the different lockdowns we had, the different scenarios that we faced. Encouraging lateral thinking, I think this is very important, because with the kind of technology advent that we are seeing, with the kind of environment changes that is happening, we all are accustomed to vertical thinking, on being very focused in our approach, trying to always focus on one point and giving it a solution. And until we don't find a solution, we stick to it. And I think that is an approach that should be averted. We should now be building individuals who think laterally, think of different aspects of a problem, be more tolerant, looking at things from all the facets of it that are available to them. From Excel sheets for a total, counting totals and the average of students, we move to an ERP, and now to a completely technology-driven education ecosystem. Technology for mental therapy, sustainable living, the future that will have a complete big economy on a greener earth. That's something that's going on right now. We are all realizing this, that the things that we had always taken for granted are now paid for. We need to buy those things. Nobody could imagine water, and rather Himalayan water, being sold at the X price that we give for it. But yes, that's a commodity. You're paying for the grade and quality of water that you're purchasing. You talked about financial literacy, accepting failure, mindfulness, and diffusing conflict. This is something that we have to rather, force feed into everybody, that whenever there's a conflict, find a way to diffuse it, find a solution to it, because even we grown-ups can see around the world that we have created amazing conflicts that are being, what I could say, used or misused as per the vested interest that's there. So this is something that's going to be very important, because if we as humans do not understand how to diffuse conflicts, technology will surely use those conflicts either as economy or as establishment. That's something that's going to happen in the future. It's not to make everybody afraid, but yes, this is something that we must be pondering our time and thoughts on. Thank you so much. Let me invite the next speaker for today, Mrs. A.N. Suryavati, Principal of Harvest International School from Bangalore, Karnataka. Suryavati ma'am, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. A very warm welcome. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Daksh. And almost all the points have been covered, but still I'll put it in my way, right? So no one is oblivious to black swans. Activating a personal improvement plan to face this new normal will be a challenge, not just for us, but the students who are sitting in our classrooms too. Hence, our task is to prepare the students for the future-ready students. The only true thing which we can say about future is that it is going to be different from today. That's all we can see. So the wake-up call for all of us is to prepare the students for this change. And that not only applies only for the students, but also the educators, all of us. And the 21st century demands that we all know is to think, to reason, to analyze, to weigh the evidence, to solve problems, and to communicate effectively. These are no longer the skills of the elite society, which was once thought about. But with this pandemic, the way we all have responded to change, we all know for sure that we will be able to cope with. All the old jobs of the past will be replaced with the future, with the World Economic Forum predicting that 42% of the core skills which are required in today will absolutely become obsolete, and the world has to prepare the children for the new things. In such complex situations which our future citizens are going to face, what is it that we have not? One magical word, technology. Of course, it is going to be there and it's going to deal with us. But then along with this technology, what is it that we have to do? One is updating. So whether it is a student or a teacher or anybody, we must have the habit of updating ourselves. And this has to be a very essential skill. And we have to realize that lifelong learning has to be an integral part. So the mantra for becoming a lifelong learner is to update ourselves, keep our minds open to learning, and keep evolving day in and day out. So the learner sitting in our classrooms should not only have a deep knowledge while updating frequently, they should also have the skills which the industry and the careers require, which are the soft skills, which all of us have spoken about. So I feel that I've taken some 5 skills which are like the primary colors. When you mix them, you also have the other skills which are touched upon. For me, the first skill is the creativity, because with curiosity and ability to connect faster, and then critically think and analyze the questions which the problems which we are facing. Then the third one is the social intelligence, which is the emotions, communicating, connecting, collaborating with others, listening and responding, motivating and giving feedback, and being a part of positive dynamic groups. All of this comes under the social intelligence. And once again, I think three of the speakers were touching about it, which is self-management, knowing about who really you are and what you really want. And are you working towards your goal or not? How do you achieve this? So once this ability to manage self comes in, I think they become, the individuals become more confident, and thereby they'll be able to achieve. And of course, if we do not know how to plan, we'll only be planning how to fail. So time management of organizing ourselves and finding the flow is also very, very, very important. And amidst all these things, I think agility is also an essential skill for surviving and succeeding in today's life. Adaptability to new ideas, and that's where the updating thing comes in. Individuals' willingness to do things differently, doing something innovatively and creatively is, as I told you, the shades of it. This is one shade of it. And one last thing is this anti-fragility. It's beyond resilience and beyond robustness, where we are better prepared to redefine the future. And then ability to calm down the chaos is something which I think all of us need. And that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suryavati ma'am. To summarize what you said, preparing the students for change and preparing them for constant change that's going to be there, and things are going to evolve very fast. They should themselves as personalities evolve even quickly to respond to it. Most of the old jobs will get replaced. When we talk of the World Economic Forum, you already said 45% of them will be replaced. What we can visualize is that the way we know the world, the way we know the employment arena is going to dramatically change. The employment will change, and we can see that from a typical economy, from a typical employment economy, we've already moved into a gig economy, where the employment is basically task-based, not even time-based, and even not on a regular basis. What should we be doing along with technology? We now need to understand that what should we be teaching the students, and at the same time, what all we need that gets plugged into technology to enable us much more. And rather, to give it a different phrase, let's not teach what technology can do, teach what technology cannot do. This is something that we need to focus on. Keep updating yourself. The way you define the primary colors of the skills that we'll be giving or should be giving the students: creativity, critical thinking, social intelligence, self-management, time management, and finally agility. And the point on which you concluded, I think that's something that everybody should read about, and anti-fragility. Or I think that's a recommendation I would recommend to everyone. Please go and buy that book, Anti-Fragile, and try to go through with it. It's an amazing concept, and it's very nicely written. And I think Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And before we move on to the next speaker, just, sorry to pop the bubble. I am not a doctor. I am not a PhD. So, but thank you so much for encouraging me. I hope I'll do a PhD in the future. So let me invite the next speaker for today. Mr. Sandeep Espai, Principal, Surana Vidyalaya from Bangalore, Karnataka. Sandeep, over to you for the next 3 to 4 minutes. Please unmute yourself, and a very warm welcome.
All right. Namaste. I am just doing your job. I'm just trying to summarize what and all people have already spoken, because I don't have much to speak, because all of them, they have already summarized it in a very precise manner. But I've been more fascinated towards letter C, and I've tried summarizing things using letter C. One is confidence. We have already spoken. Communication, creativity. I think content related, or the content related to my job. What is that my job, and what is the content that is expected out of me for me to contribute to the job? So that is something very important. Computer, I will say machinacy. Now machine learning is very important. Even if someone is crying next to me, that's still okay. But a computer should be not, troubling me. That is most important, unfortunately. So machinacy also is important. Creativity, yes, we have already heard. I think commitment is not a skill. It's a by birth value, but unfortunately I'm scared that we may have to teach commitment as a skill, looking at the attrition rate, looking at the quality of work that we get. So commitment may be a dearth in future. Coping skills, people management. Just now I said that my colleague is crying, and am I not connected with him or her? So emotional language learning is something very important for all of us. So we may have to go back to people management, or I will say connect. How are we getting connected? I also want to use cognitive flexibility. I teach mathematics, I teach science or social, but how is my child ready to take all the three as interdisciplinary or maybe transdisciplinary, or use how flexible is my child to pick all the three together? Decision making to data driven decision making. So why are we not focusing more on the data which technology or the most MNCs keep speaking about? I think industry-based dynamic leadership is what is needed. Leadership, we all have many of our school leaders, and we have been learning accounting skills and many other skills which are never a part of our B.Ed or any other courses, but maybe industry-based dynamic leadership. And that's what, to summarize what my other colleague mentioned about updating self and so on, self-management and so on. And in Indian context, to be very precise, I think multilinguistic approach must be encouraged. Thanks to NEP, that multilingualism is being encouraged to a very high level. But if you're not knowing many languages, at least in Indian context, then I'm afraid about the connect that you will have with your colleagues in your workplace. Artificial intelligence, customer-centered approach, all these are part of our life. Now, from work from home to work from anywhere is what we need to train or learn from anywhere, earn from anywhere. So this becomes, the tomorrow, and because of which synergy will be a challenge, and getting accustomed to different synergy-based challenges, I think we should be focusing. Earlier, 10 years before, we used to hear something called as hardware, software. No hardware, no software. But now the good breathing techniques are, you should know hardware and you should know software to manage your own self online. So the last point is, technology is already on the boom, and I'm sure it will grow even more. And after 10 years, we'll all start working on how do I de-technologize myself. I think that will also be one of the very important skills that we all should start learning. That's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. I think you summarized the complete conversation very well. I would rather typically stick to what you said. Confidence, communication, creativity, content for my job, computer or machine learning, creativity, and most important, I think this is a very important point, commitment as a skill. The attrition rates are at an all-time high. People do not want to stick to organizations. People do not want to stick to their single jobs. People want to maneuver around. People want to move around. And I think this is what we can say rather detrimental to the growth of the industry, of any industry. So commitment as a skill is very important. People management, coping skills, emotional language learning. We have to connect with the complete typically understanding organizational behavior more, and trying to understand that with the kind of cues that you get, whether they are emotional, whether they are linguistic, whether they are spiritual, understanding it from all the aspects of it. Connect, cognitive flexibility, data-driven decision-making. This is something that everybody is learning right now. That's why data analytics, data science have become very important in the coming employment arena. Industry-based dynamic leadership. And I think, yes, we need to understand that what a job requires, going a little bit deeper into the exact requirements of a job or any task that you have to do in your future as your employment or as your engagement or money-making mechanism in the future. This has to be understood more rather than just, filling people with a lot of theory, with a lot of concepts, making things a little more application-driven and a little more practical. Multilinguistic approach. I think everybody should now focus on building their students or children with a minimum trilingual attitude. 3 languages must be there. If you at least not know 3 languages, it's going to be a major setback for you throughout your life. When we want to build global citizens, I think 3 language or being trilingual is a mandate. You cannot afford to be bilingual or just unilingual in the coming times. work from anywhere. This is something that we need to understand and learn, because we are accustomed to sitting onto a chair, getting into a zone, and only then we start working. And that's when our brain starts responding. We have to rather intertwine our work into our life in a way that it keeps happening on its own. And finally, the hard software. I think everything has come together, which finally leads us to a very good conclusion to the talk, that in the future, we will absolutely be looking at de-technologizing ourselves. And that will be the new meditation that has already creeped into our lives with apps like Calm and music that typically tries to make you sleep when you're not able to get your sleep. I think that's something that has already started showing some proof of the pudding that this is absolutely going to happen in the future. So thank you so much, Sandeepji. Now it's typically the end. We have heard all the speakers for today. For the next 2 to 3 minutes, it's an open floor. If you got muted, if you want to add something to the conversation, if you missed out onto anything, you can unmute yourself and you can speak it out right now. It's an open floor. The control is with you. Request all the speakers, whoever wants to speak out, you can unmute yourself. Just try to take care of each other so that everybody can speak out. So it's over to you for the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Can I put in a word here?
Please.
Yeah, there were a few things because I was so conscious of my time that was given to me. So I'd like to, let everybody know that initially we had this difference of how we approached the first lockdown in 2020. Initially, we were stunned. We didn't, we were in total disbelief that something like this could happen. We thought it was going to move away. And then after some time, we settled, everybody was online and memes were out, people got into creativity, they stopped by to smell the roses. Then we thought it was over. This year, again, when it came, our approach to this situation was different. We were a little bored. We said, oh no, not again. Now, we don't know what's to come. So I would like to, I think the way I see it is, and what I tell children or youngsters around me or anybody, stay prepared, sada taiyar, keep yourself ready for change. Change is something that's really, it's a big thing now. It's very dynamic. It's happening at its most dynamic rate now. So I would say stay ready at all times and be prepared for change. Be happy about it. Change has to come. Change has to happen. There could be new skills that would come out of yet another lockdown, that in case it does happen. So thank you. Over to the next person.
Thank you, ma'am.
May I?
Thank you. Aruna, ma'am, please.
Daksh, I actually, after listening to everybody, am reminded of a sentence in Sanskrit. Since you said multilinguistic, so I thought I'll just tell this and then maybe get away with it. It says, Yasya nasti swayam pragya, shastram tasya karoti ke. And that, I believe, is the most important requirement. He who cannot use his own intelligence, what can the books do for him? See, at the end of the day, it's the thinking skill that is most important. Once you start thinking, you can actually find the solutions for everything around you. Anything and everything is possible. So what one needs is to actually build one's own thinking skills. And I'll just like to add one more thing. We were talking about the new NEP and the various combination of subjects. I just wanted to let this August forum know that the CBSE actually has had this for time immemorial. Adhyapana school, in our school for the last 12 years, we have given sometimes sort of weird combinations because the students have opted for it. I have had a student taking English, physics, chemistry, history, and geography. Now, somebody asked me why this kind of a random combination. I give it, even if it is just one student, physics, chemistry, maths, economics with English is a wonderful combination. The reason being that they have their own philosophies. They want to go in for civil services. Somebody wants to do something different. I had a student who said, I want to join RAW. And for RAW, I need all these skills. Now, how does the future go about? The colleges are also now flexible. They are offering all sorts of combinations, or you could just be specializing in one. And I wish all schools, could actually adopt this. We have done it for the last 12 years. It's not difficult. It's wonderful. We offer 19 different subjects to our standards 11 and 12 as choices, and they can take anything. The only one compulsory subject being English. Thank you.
I think weird combinations now need to become the normal or the norm of the day. Let the combination be decided by the student, because when we talk of NEP, when we talk of the Academic Board of Credit, everything talks about flexibility, multiple entry, multiple exits. Because, when we go into education, we think that we know the plan, but rather education is something that you don't do. It happens to you. And it happens as a realization. Okay, this is what I want to learn next. This is what I want to know next. So yeah, thank you so much, Aruna ma'am. If anybody wants to contribute something, they can unmute themselves right away.
If I would just like to continue with what Aruna ma'am actually said, yes, even I believe, ma'am, perceptive thinking. When you talk about perceptive thinking, the ability to adapt and perceive, that will definitely play a role in the future. Because it allows a flexibility which is gained after cognition, if you talk about it, or acquiring relevant knowledge. You can also see what perceptive thinking does is it brings in elements of the emotional and social quotients. So in other terms, it's about the ability to use your knowledge, to create a curiosity, and of course, something called growth mindset. That is so important in an individual. You see, you must work on building your individual and collective capacities, because today, that as we've all been talking about, you can't work in isolation. So perceptive thinking is something that's so very important, because it triggers deep thought processes both within and beyond.
The last word, I would say that schools should also allow students to pursue passion economy. That means they go in the direction that they think they are passionate about, because the future is going to be an economy of passion. It's not going to be an economy, as you said, that is something which we can forecast, or we can think that it is going to happen this way. It's not going to happen. So that was one thing which I just wanted to add. Thank you.
I think from a career fashion economy to a passion economy, so that we don't go by the trends, rather build the trends from our passion.
If I may, I think I agree with ma'am, because I think more than the children, in fact, children are more adaptable and they do absorb all these concepts that we bring in. But it's, as they grow older and the career becomes a focus, it's the home and the background that comes in, and there's this mindset that predisposed mindset that we have. And that's the change that we also need to focus on beyond the children, because children today are extremely talented, and I think they will adapt given the circumstances. They are capable of that. But certain career choices, we need to give them the freedom, trust their choices, and give them that freedom.
Giving them the control to drive their own education. And most importantly, believing in them, trusting them that, okay, you can take a decision, you can take a call. So I think most of the speakers have already contributed. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Before this call comes to an end, since 2014, Blub World works on a very simple concept of teens inspiring teens. Because one thing that we have learned while working with children and schools for a reasonable amount of time is that now teaching has to transform itself. And it should not transform itself in a way where it again focuses on a new kind of content. It should move to the core essence or the core meaning of the word knowledge, which simply is made up of two words: knowing your ledge, or wisdom. And you can only encourage or induce wisdom by inspiration. And that inspiration has to come from people that these students can relate to. And that's where we found our idea, and that's where we worked on finding teenagers who are doing amazingly well. So one such story of a teenager for all of you, before this call comes to an end. This is a story of a teen who lives in the US. Her mother had a passion of creating candy or making candy at home. And the passion transcended into her. She started making candy, and she made candy so successfully that right now the world's biggest retail chain carries her brand across the US markets, and you can find her candy across all the Walmarts, and we call her the Candypreneur, and that's Elena Moss, who was on the cover page of Blub World just some months back. And that's what we simply do every month, trying to find a teen who's doing amazingly well and sharing their stories with many more teens. And around a year back, we thought, let's bring these teens together. And that's where the idea of the World Teen Parliament was born. We are thankful to our supporters, UNESCO New Delhi office, UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute, for helping us in bringing this idea to a reality. We are looking for 100 teens who can become the parliamentarians of the World Teen Parliament with their innovative solutions, and the World Teen Parliament will be funding their ideas. The only thing that they spend to participate in the teen parliament is their intelligence and their attention, and absolutely nothing else. Because we all now need to understand that intelligence will only happen to people. It cannot be forced, it cannot be fed. So thank you so much everybody for being a part of the Blub World Web Talks 152nd episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, and if you want to attend the future sessions, please open your audio and say a big yes. And thank you so much for being a part of this complete conversation. Have an amazing evening ahead. Namaste people. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Definitely. Yes. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
What is that one thing that can transform this world? That one thing is education.
At Sai University, this active interdisciplinary model represents the future of education, not the mugging, rather thought-provoking ideas that stretch the mind and lead to a genuinely educated person who will go through life being able to seize new opportunities, create new businesses, and confront new challenges.
Sneha Chowdhury, Soumya Gandhi,
Abhishek Jain.
We are all proud to be a part of Sai University.